This entire trophy base will be constructed with cherry, mostly 4/4, but I started off with some 6/4 cherry stock for the absolute bottom of the base. The second piece was a bit bowed, but I was able to get it flat using the bandsaw of all things, since I no longer have a jointer. And even the jointer I did have was much too small to handle something like this anyway. This method actually worked really well and gave me a flat enough surface that I was able to run it through my planer afterwards. This is a perfect example of what a zero clearance insert does for your table saw. I don't have one, but it would have come in handy here. So I just stopped the saw, lowered the blade, pulled that piece out, and then stood to the side and started the saw again to make sure nothing was jammed up or anything, and everything was clear, so then I could get back to work. Here's a quick montage of all the 4/4 stock I broke down for this project. I suspect one or two of these clips was also a piece of another project as well, but you get the idea. This probably isn't going to be the best video I've made to date because the camera I've been using had an unfortunate fall and is off being repaired now. There's something about shooting with my phone that just makes me forget to hit record far more often than with my camera. I still wanted to show how this piece came together in the end, and if there were a couple steps that happened off camera, well, that's okay. I'd still rather put something out and let you see what I did. After everything was cut to rough dimensions and the thick pieces I would be using as a base were at their final dimensions, I added a miter to each end so that they would be glued into a frame at the bottom of the trophy base. Because my table saw doesn't go high enough to cut all the way through, I used a flush cut pole saw to finish the job. The table saw got most of the way and provided a good reference surface for the flush cut saw. I would have made these cuts on the miter saw, but they never seemed to come out quite as crisp. Once that's done, I can glue up the four sides and start building from there. If you find any of this useful or entertaining, or you use some of the ideas for a project you're working on, please consider subscribing. It would mean a lot, even if, like I said, it's not my best video. Thank you. Normally when I use mortise and tenon joinery, I cut the mortises first, but this time I cut my tenons and measured the mortises off of those. The next level will be mortised into with the upright pieces connected to the bottom part of the base. But if that doesn't quite make sense, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about in a minute. I use a dado stack on my table saw and a sled to make sure that all my tenons are cut exactly the same. I use a Forstner bit to clear out most of the waste in the mortise and then square it off with a chisel. I repeat the process on the underside of the next level up as well, as you'll see in a moment. As I mentioned before, I failed to record some of the steps of this build process, but during this glue up you can see that I put a profile on all the edges on the pieces that have been going up so far. And now I'm adding these uprights to the base and then the next level up above them as well. Hope this now makes it more of a clear picture of what I was trying to explain earlier. You can also see I used some green painter's tape to mark which mortise was which, because I'd sanded all the markings off before. So this allowed me to get everything lined up and get everything in the correct mortise that it was cut for. I traced a can of finish and cut a rough circle on the bandsaw, and then I used this sander to get it down to the line. And kind of forgot some of the safety procedures with this because I don't use it very often, as you're about to see. It's important to keep a good grip on your work even with working with a sander, and I know for me it's easy to get complacent when using something that doesn't necessarily have a blade. But this can still happen if you're not careful. Should have been a warning, but then shortly after that, this happened. Skipping ahead a bit in that process, you can see I've rounded everything over. I'm taking one last slow, smooth pass to round off any imperfections. And once this is done, I can sand this final piece, glue the goat on the top, and get ready for finish. And there's our final product. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this.